arrange for me an extra mashkiach. Let's say it was going to be Tuesday morning, and he would be there Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. So I get there at 8 o'clock. I'm there from before, of course, but he's not there. And I'm calling to say, all right, what's going on? What's going on? Finally, at 8:35, this halb for shluf in the yeshiva comes running in. Okay, I'm here. So I asked him, Pastor Shon gedavent? So he says, sure. Then is the gedavent? I said, I'm at 8 o'clock meeting. So he says, so roll up your sleeve. Ich habe gedavent at 5 in the morning. And he sees all the lines, and he didn't have a line. He says, weißt du, das Geier heim, geht zurück schlufen, ich habe noch schon gefunden, eine zweite Meshkiach. Okay. So let's see the Gemara. We are up to Ayin Amud base, but we're not at the bottom of the Amud. We're about 9 lines from the bottom. Gufa. Zogt Ahilig Gemara. Gufa. Hamudar Hano Mechaver. Somebody is usher to have Hano from his friend. So let's say Shimon may not have Hano from Reuven. Either because Shimon ushered himself to have Hano from Reuven, or Reuven asked Shimon to have enough from him. Whatever the case is, Shimon cannot have enough from Reuven. And Shimon does not have any food to eat. And Reuven wants to help him, but Reuven is not allowed to give him any hana. So the solution is, let Reuven go to a storekeeper that he has a relationship with, and he can tell him the following. Ish Peloni, my friend Shimon, Mudur hano mimen. He's not allowed to have enough from me. And I want to help him, but the Eini Yodeya Ma'esaloi. I don't know what I can do for him. So the Chenveni on his own will understand what his good customer is telling him. And then Hunoisenloi, the Chenveni will give food to Shimon. And then Uva v'noitel mizah, and then he'll go to Reuven, and Reuven will pay. So that's allowed because Reuven is not making anybody a shliach to be Mahana Shimon. Reuven is just saying a statement, and the Chamveni understood it on his own. How about Beisai Livnois? His house needed a repair. This Shimon, his house needed a repair, and he couldn't afford to do it. The Gudeir Ligdar, his fence needed a repair, or Visadei Liktzar, and his field was ready to be harvested. He needed help harvesting it. So then, once again, you can go over, Reuben can go over to Payalim, who he has a relationship with, and say the same thing. And then Heinosh and Imai, they will do the work on behalf of Shimon. They will be Mahana Shimon. And then Reuben can pay them. What about Hoyu Mahalchan B'derech? The Ein Imai Mayochel. They were traveling together, and there's no Chenveni there. And again, Shimon doesn't have what to eat. So Reuven could noisin la'acher l'shimatana. If there's a third traveler there, Reuven can give food to the third traveler as a gift. And then Shimon will take it from that third traveler. Umutter and another water. What happens in Ein Sham Acher? What if you don't even have a third person to give it to? So then Meniach al Gabay Asela Oy al Gabay Hakeder. He'll put it down, the food on a rock, on a fence, on any surface. Reuben can declare, this is hefker for everybody. And then Shimon can take it and eat it. Umutter, and it will be mutter. But Rabbi Yosy says this is also. Amar Rav, my time with Rabbi Yosy. Why would Rabbi Yosy answer? So tomorrow Gzeira Mishum Maisa the Beis Chayrin. It's Gzeira because the Maisa of Beis Chayrin. What happened in Beis Chayrin? Here, in Rabbi Yosy's case, no one's stupid. You're being mafkir something, it's only you and him. And you're being mafkir it. Well, obviously you're giving it to him. So in the case of Beis Chayrin, there was a man who was marrying off his child. And his father had said that his father made a neder not to have enough from him. So the grandfather was not going to be able to come to the wedding because the grandfather made an Isser Hana on himself to have any benefit from his son, and his son's paying for the wedding. So what happened was the son said, in order to get my father to come, I'm going to be mafkir al my nechasim, or I'll be mafkir the entire Suda. So then the grandfather said, oh really? So I'm going to claim it, and I'm making it all hektish. So the son said, no, you can't make it hektish. I didn't mafkir the entire Suda just because I wanted you to give it to hektish. I did it because I wanted you to come to the meal. So it was obvious that his whole being mafkir was a fraud. It was just a ruse to get around the problem of the Isra no. And that's not allowed. And that's why Yosy says, even in this case, it's not allowed. In this case, it's not the same as that case. That case is where the person being mafkir said, I'm being mafkir only so that my father can come to the wedding. That's often, that's for sure, not a good hefker. Here, he's not saying that specifically, but it's only him and Shimon there, and he's being mafkir. It's obvious what he means to do. So Zok Yosy, that's also not going to work because it's a gzeira because of the Beis Chorin when it was stated explicitly.
What about a lot of these mitzvahs or the gezeros or lavin could be, we can get around them by like a heteriska, selling your chametz, all of those things. And we know it's obvious. We want, the chametz is kept in your house, but it's obvious it's to get around the isser. And those things are fine.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why Rabbi Yosy decides to make the gzeira here and not by selling chametz. I don't know.
I mean, even by a promise, you have to be made for neder by a promise to be able to say that it truly wasn't what you intended. And that's
we're not being matched neder over here.
Right, but once we see that we have to go with that idea, we see that this was not the intention of the person being after it. So that's not.
Well, in the case of Beis Chorin, he said so. He said, I'm only being mafkir to let you come. I don't really want to be mafkir. So that's really a problem. The question is, if it looks like a problem, are we going to answer it because it might look like a problem?
Okay.
So I'm not sure. But David, let me ask you a question. By chametz, what if I specify I'm only selling the guy the chametz because I want to be able to get it back after Pesach? So that wouldn't invalidate the sale. It would still be a good sale.
That's right. It would be. So, but this.
Yeah, but if I say I'm not really being mafkir, I'm only trying to get my father to come. So then you're saying it's not a real hefker.
Well, you're saying, listen, I really don't want to lend my money without interest. Okay. But if we'll do a heteriska so I can get the interest from it. So we create a kind of a legal fiction, and therefore it matters taking interest. Basically, it's against the spirit of halacha. The spirit of halacha. We get around it through legalities, but that's not what.
So technically, it works. The question is why we allow it.
Oh, here's where it's why. The reason why
it works because technically it works. Why shouldn't it work?
No, the reason why it's allowed is because the Chachamim saw that there was a kippur, that there was something that people were not lending money. Originally, it wasn't like that. People did not lend with a prusbul. Prusbul only came about. I'm sorry, not prusbul.
But prusbul is the same story.
Right, that's why I got confused. But the idea is, what I'm saying is that it only came around much later, when Yidden were not behaving in the spirit of the law anyway, and so therefore they decided that it's more important to lend so that the whole thing doesn't just get frozen up.
Sure.
You can't ask from prison or from heteristic.
It sounds like these cases are exactly analogous to those, because exactly like Chaim Tzvi said, the reason that the Chachamim are mad with these things is because the guy would starve, right? He needs food. So we have to come up with some way of allowing him to eat, even though he's made a neder. Right? It seems like it is analogous to a heteriska.
I forgot about that. I forgot this guy's starving in the desert. We're having our whole discussion. This guy's like dying of thirst.
It would seem that if somebody would make a neder for no reason, if in this case of the wedding, maybe that's not a good enough reason.
No, in the case of the wedding, it's worse.
It's worse. He was explicit
about it.
I'm
making $1 million hefker.
And he's explicit about
That's
it.
worse. So the Beis Chorin is much worse. In our case, it's a gzeira. And the question is, do we make that gzeira or not? Right. In the case of Beis Chorin, it's for sure a problem because he's saying it's not a real hefker. Okay, gewalt. Let's see the Gemara weiter. Rabbi Yehuda Eimer b'Yisrael chodesh echad. So if we look at the actual Lashon HaMishnah, there's some interesting points to note. The Tanakama, when he talks about how much time is involved, he says Lamed Yoim, he says 30 days. Rabbi Yehuda changes the terminology and he starts talking about months. Rabbi Yehuda, Yisrael Chodesh Echad Yekayim U'Shnayim Yotzi. So that's one unusual thing. The Gemara is going to ask, why did Rabbi Yehuda repeat Yisrael Chodesh Echad if that's perfectly consistent with what the Tanakama said? He should have only said B'kayin Shnayim Yekayim, because that's where he's dissenting from the Tanakama. But why did he repeat the Tanakama's opinion by Yisrael? So let's see what the Gemara says. The first statement that he made is exactly the same thing as the Tanakama. The only reason why Rabbi Yehuda is arguing is because of Kaihenes. In fact, he's agreeable to the Tanakama by Yisrael that it's 1 month. But Rava says, as we noted, one of the diukim was, why did the Tanakama use Lamed Yoim? And why did Rabbi Yehuda use Chodesh? It's because Chodesh Shmolei, the Chodesh Chaser Ike Benayu. When Rabbi Yehuda said Chodesh, he meant a Chodesh of 29 days, not 30 days. The Tanakama specifies 30 days. So that's where there's a machlokes if it's 29 days, which is Rabbi Yehuda Shita, or if it's 30 days, which is the Shita of the Tanakama. And in fact, Rabbi Yehuda is arguing with the Tanakama even by Yisrael. Amar Rav said, now this Gemara we already learned on Daf Samach Aleph in the base, and the Gemara asked over there, why does Rav and Shmuel argue in both places if their machlokes is essentially the same? And the Gemara answered over there the same thing that the Gemara is going to answer over here, which will be a good chazar. Amar Rav said, this that we say that more than 30 days they have to divorce, that's only if the neder was specified for 30 days. Aval bestam, and I'm sorry, and less than 30 days, he can keep her, is b'mefarish. Aval bestam, what if, good morning, what if the person made a neder and he didn't specify how much time there is? So it's basically indefinitely. So then the halacha is Yosy la'alter v'yitin ksuba. Then right away, they have to divorce. He has to divorce her, and he has to pay her up. Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel said, "Afilu b'stam lo yotzi." Why? Because even though it's an indefinite nether, it's still possible. Shema yimtza pesach l'nidra. So up to 30 days, we'll give him to try to find the pesach to be mater's nether, and after that, no. While Rav says not once he makes another indefinitely, immediately has to give a get, and the reasoning is because if she knows that the nether is only for 30 days, so that's something she can be soivel those 30 days. But if the nether is indefinitely, my husband never wants me, he never wants to give him his oinus, then she can't even be soivel that for 1 day. Correct the Gemara, why does Rav and Shmuel have to express their machlokes here in a case where someone answered the law of his nechasim on his wife? If l'gubei chadu zimna, they've already argued regarding a husband who was refraining from tashmish. It's not we learned on Daf Samach Aleph from the days. Hamaders ishtay mitashmish amita. If somebody answers, if someone answers himself to have tashmish, so he's now refraining from tashmish. Bishami says up to 2 weeks. We still Shabbos achas only 1. The Omar Rav, and over there regarding that shaila, Rav said again machlokes b'mefarish. The machlokes is only if he specified at the time of his nether how long it's going to last for. Aval b'stam, if he made an indefinite nether, Yosy la'alter. Just like Rav says over here, when he made a nether not to give him his oinus. Shmuel Amar afilu b'stam nami lo yotzi. Why? Because Shema yimtza pesach. So the question is, why did Rav and Shmuel have to explain their machlokes both by tashmish as well as by mizonis? If you think about it, it's the same shaila, it's the same svara. Does a woman think that since there's no limit to his nether, I can't be soivel in one day? Or do you say she still has 30 days to reconsider? Zogt Gemara Tricha. We need this machlokes in both places. The Iter Bahi, if the machlokes was only over there on Daf Samach Aleph, where the discussion was refraining from Tashmish, Bahi Ka'amar Rav. Only there did Rav say that if it's an indefinite nether, he has to give her a get right away. Because Mishum Deloy Efsher B'Parnas. Unlike when it comes to Mazonis, he cannot find a friend to take over those responsibilities during this period of time. Aval Baha, but another regarding money, the Efsher B'Parnas, where he could find a substitute for himself in the meantime. Ema, Shmuel, maybe he would agree to Shmuel that she's also able to survive the 30 days. No, that's the point. And if we only had the halacha over here that by answering her to have parnasa, by answering her on mezainos, if we only had this case, then Bahakar Shmuel, only over here the Shmuel say that we still give them 30 days, Mishum de Efsher B'Parnas. Aval Bahi, but in the case of Tashmish, where even in the interim, there's no way to find a substitute, the Rav, that he has to give a get right away. Tzricha, that's why we need the halacha in both cases. So we know the halacha is, if he specifies 30 days or less, he doesn't have to give her a get. And if he doesn't specify an amount at all, indefinitely, then there's a machlokes Rav and Shmuel if he has to give a get. What if he specifies 35 days? What if he specifies a date that's more than 30 days? So that's a machlokes Rishonim. The Rashba holds that he would have to give her a get right away, because because right away she can't be soivel, because she'll say my husband doesn't want to be with me for at least 50 days. I can't be soivel that. And the Ritva holds that if it's specified, she says, oh, you know what, that's not so bad, because my husband wants me. V'haraya, he put a limit on this nether, and therefore I think I could stay. Zok Tahed el Gemara. Tanan we learned. Hamadir's ishtoi shaloi titam echad mikol ha'peres. So Victor told me that we're going to learn today in the Gemara the reason why there's a problem here for her. I didn't find it, but what I understood was, after looking into it a little bit, is that it's an inconvenience. It's putting into a not geshmaka situation, and since she's in a not geshmaka situation, we can ask him to give her a get. So a mother is ishto shalotidim echad mikol peres, Yosy v'itim suba, and the Tosfos actually makes it clear, la b'chol peres mother-in-law. He's not prohibiting her from eating any pears. The nether wouldn't have been chal at all. The efshel alakayim. It's impossible to survive without eating pears. It's just like saying, if someone says I'm never going to sleep, the nether is not chal. The Meshashina doesn't even ask her to sleep, because it's an impossible nether. However, the nether here is, he said that she may not eat one type of pears. And of course, we learned in Rashi, which the Gemara is going to elaborate on, he can't answer her from eating oranges, but speaking where she answered it, and he was not made for. Even if she never ate an orange, imagine he made it also for her to eat oranges, and she never ate an orange in her life anyway. So he's not even really restricting her. Nevertheless, that's called a restriction. That's called a discomfortable restriction that she doesn't want to live under. So let's go back to the Gemara. Tanan, Hamader is ishtoi. That's reason for him to let her go, but he'll have to give her the ksuba. Zok to Gemara. Bishlam al Rav. Bishlam, according to Rav, you have to understand, here he was mother's wife. He didn't say 30 days. He didn't say anything. It was stam. So the halacha here is that right away he has to be moitzi here. So Bishlam, according to Rav, who understood that in the case of stam, right away he has to divorce her This is no different than the case where he said, I'm not going to give her mazonis. Kambis tam kambim farish. In the case of mazonis, where we said it's 30 days, that's because he specified 30 days. But in this nether about Paris, where there was no time limit mentioned, the requirement is Yosy v'yitin Kesubos right away. Elul Shmuel will hold that you give him 30 days, even if there's no time limit specified on the nether, kosher. Why does our Mishnah say that which means right away? Why doesn't the Mishnah say, no, wait 30 days, and if he's not matir the nether, then he has to be moitzi v'yitin Kesubos. The case here is she was the one who made the nether, like Rashi told us in the Mishnah. V'kayim law iu, and he was Mekayim. The Kesubos Reb Meir, and Reb Meir holds that this is worse than just answering Hana, because it's who noisen etzba bein shinah. He put his finger in her mouth, so naturally when she bites down on it, it's his fault. And therefore, even right away, since he's doing this to her, even right away, we consider this something that she cannot live with.
Tosfos explains the issue and how this answers up the Mishnah. At least according to Art Scroll, he does.
Well, he's quoting the Tosfos.
Yeah. Says that the reason is he can't ask her to eat the fruit, but he says if you eat the fruit, then you won't have tashmish, right?
Yeah, but that's Rashi's pshat. That's Tosfos' pshat. Rashi does not learn that way. So that complicates it a little bit. That is how Tosfos learns, but it's a little bit more of a complicated pshat. Rashi does not learn that way.
So, why isn't that pshat? Like he can't tell her you can't eat this fruit. He can't answer her for having.
No, it's speaking where she answered it on herself.
That's the second one, also for tashmish. But in the first case, he asked her.
No. Rashi learns that the case is, and that's what the Gemara says. And there was no tashmish involved here at all, according to Rashi. Tosfos mixes in the tashmish factor, that they're tighter than tashmish, but Rashi doesn't learn that way.
So according to Rashi, how does he, if he says that she cannot have hana from the Paris, right? Why does he have to divorce her in that case? How does he have the power to do that, according to Rashi?
Well, let's say she could make a nether for herself, right?
No,
she
but
could ask herself on oranges.
The first neder, where it's quoting the Mishnah, where he says that he makes a neder.
So Rashi says it doesn't mean. Rashi right on the Mishnah says it doesn't mean that he made a nether. It means that she made a nether, and then he said, "I'm a kind of nether."
Isn't that the second? Isn't that the second case? That's the hachah b'mayaskinen. Isn't that the hachah b'mayaskinen?
The case of Hamader is Ishtoi Shaloi Tita Echad Mikola Peres.
Yeah.
That is the case of the Mishnah. And
yes.
That's the case that the Gemara is telling us, is speaking where she made the nether and he was Mekayim. And according to Rashi, it has nothing to do, it's not linked at all to an Isser Tashmish.
Okay.
So Tosfos is a more of a complicated shot. We're going to have to use that shot later on in the Gemara. The Gemara actually uses it later on. But right now here, I want to stick to the Rashi shot that there was no Tashmish involved. She made a nether, he was Mekayim it, and since he was Mekayim it, and now he can't be shoyal on the nether, because it's not his nether, it's her nether. So once she makes the nether, and he's Mekayim it, he could no longer be made for it ever again, and therefore she becomes usher to him right away now. Now, the Rishonim do have a question. The Rashba speaks out, when a woman makes a nether that a husband has the right to be made for, the husband actually has three courses of action that he could take. He could either be made for the nether and say, I'm a vatlet. He could either say, I'm a kaimit, or he could ignore it, and then automatically after 24 hours, it's chal. Zok the Rashba, when do we blame this on him and we say, Hu noisen etzba bein shinaha, is if he was positively mekayim it. But if he wasn't positively mekayim it, he just wasn't made for it, he could say, I didn't get around to it, I was busy. So the Rashba learns that it's only who noisen etzba bein shinaha if he took a positive action to to confirm her nether. And only then would he have to give her a get, otherwise she would not have to give her a get. There's a shaila about that. If the there's actually that's a big lump. There's a shaila that we're going to learn in the Durham, because the shaila is: do you say that the nether is not complete until he completes it, or do you say it's effective immediately and he's overruling it? Right. So that's a very big lump that we're going to run to in the Durham.
Can you explain why that Pesach that we had that I just didn't get around to it only works with one and not with the other? And why couldn't we just say that I didn't get around to being maker?
That's exactly what he said. That's exactly what I'm saying.
No, so meaning when, but you said if he doesn't do that for 24 hours, it's going to be chal.
If he's not made for the nether, it's going to be chal.
Why can't he just say that he didn't get around to it?
That's exactly the case. That's why the Rashba holds. That's why the Rashba holds that if her nether took effect, not because he positively was Makayim it, rather he just wasn't made for it, then he doesn't have to give her a get. Because he didn't do it to her. He just didn't get a chance to save her from herself. Frank the Gemara, the Besavar Reb Meir, who knows in Esra, does Reb Meir take that position that when she makes a nether and he's not made for it, that it's his fault? Well, Tanya, we learned, a woman who said, I already Nazar, a woman could also be a Nazar. Vishama Baila, and her husband heard that she accepted upon herself Naziris, Veloy Hafarla, and the husband was not made for her. He allowed her to become a Nazar. Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda, I remember Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda both say, he nasna etva ben shina. She's the one who messed herself up. Lefichach, therefore, im ratza haba lahafer yafer. Either he could be made for it, but v'imama, or he could say, I'm not being made for it. And then after he's not made for it, he can say, v'imamar i evshi be'ishin adronis. I don't want to live with a woman who makes nidar. The Allah is teitze shaloi b'ksuba. He can get rid of her and not even give her a ksuba. There's actually a shayla. You find often there's cases where he has to divorce her, or he could divorce her, and he doesn't have to give her a ksuba. And sometimes he could divorce her and he doesn't have to give her a ksuba. And the primary case or symptom that allows him to divorce her without a ksuba is if she's doing something that's damaging the marriage. The question is, but if it's a zayte gezach that he doesn't like that she's doing, where he has a right to divorce her, but he still has to pay her out, then he would still have to pay her out. So the question is, because she's in the dronis, that's not impacting their like if she was asking from Tashmish, if she wanted Tashmish with him, yeah, then they can give her a divorce and not give her ksuba because she's not fulfilling her responsibilities of marriage. But because she became a nazir, that doesn't impact her responsibilities of marriage. So the Mefarshim tell us that we know that someone who makes a nether and does not fulfill their nether, it leads to their children dying. And therefore, when she makes a nether and when she makes a nether that he doesn't like, he has a right to say, I don't want to leash nadronis because that's already putting their family in danger. Rabbi Yosy Rabbi Elazar says, "Who knows an etzba ben shina?" It was his fault because he was mekayim the nether. Lefichach imratza abal lahafer yafer. If he wants, he can be made for. But the mamar if she reached nadronis, but if he was mekayim the nether and then he says, I don't want to live with this woman who makes these nadarim, well then Yosy v'yitin ksuba. He would have to give ksuba. So you see, there's a machloikas here when a wife makes a nether and the husband's mekayim it. Is that the husband's fault? Is that the husband's fault, which is Rabbi Yosy and Rabbi Eliezer, or is that the wife's fault, which is Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda? So our problem is we just said in our sugya. Now Rabbi Meir holds it's his fault, but in the brayta that we just quoted with the case of Nazir, clearly Rabbi Meir says over there that it's her fault. So after Gemara Epuch, we'll have to switch it around. We'll have to say Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Imrim, who noisei, and Rabbi Yosy, Rabbi Eliezer, Imrim, he nasna. So we'll just flip around this brayta. The shita of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda will be who noisei that ben shina, it's his fault, and Rabbi Yosy and Rabbi Eliezer will be the ones who said that it's her fault. In fact, the Gemara Besavar Rabbi Yosy. So you're telling me that Rabbi Yosy holds that it's her fault? Besavar Rabbi Yosy, he nasna. But now I'll prove to you that Rabbi Yosy also holds that it's his fault. Rabbi Yosy, Omer, Ba'aniyos, in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yosy said that if he says she can't have a certain perfume, if it's a poor woman, it's only a problem if it's loy nasan kitzvah. It's only a problem if it's loy nasan kitzvah, and only then does he have to divorce her right away. So once again over there, that had to be her nether that he was Mekayim, yet you still see that he can give her a get right away without a ksuba. So you see, Rabbi Yosy holds, I'm sorry, he has to give her a get right away with her ksuba, is what the halacha says in our Mishnah. He has to give her a get right away with a ksuba. So you see clearly it's hunoisen over there. Zok to Gemara, okay, so then we have to switch it around again. Eimer Rab Meir of Rabbi Yosy, Aimim hunoisen. Rab Meir and Rabbi Yosy are the ones that hold that every nether is blamed on the husband. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Elazar, Aimim, he knows not. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Elazar says that it's her fault. In fact, Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda won't either fit into that. So Rabbi Yehuda, he knows not, but now I'll show you that Rabbi Yehuda also blames it on the man. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, by Yisrael Yom Echad Yikayim. By Yisrael, you can keep it for one day, and then he has to give her a divorce and give her a ksuba. But once again, we're seeing that we force him to pay her out and divorce her. So you see again, we blame it on the husband. So Zok to Gemara, okay, then we have to rejig it again. Aimer of Meir of Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosy Aimer. All three Tanoim say who knows, and we blame it on the man. Rabbi Elazar Aimer, he knows, and Rabbi Elazar blames it on the woman. That's not the shmak to say there's a machlokes 3 against 1. In Tim Saloimer, Zugi Katani, if you want it to be 2 against 2, and you don't want it to be 3 against 1, well then Ema, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Elazar Aimer, he nasna. You'll say that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar said that it's her fault, and Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosy Aimer, who knows, and then our Mishnah will not stim with Rabbi Meir. So in our Mishnah, it doesn't say it's Reb Meir. It's a Stam Mishnah. The Gemara wanted to say that it's Reb Meir, but if we see that Reb Meir holds that we blame it on her and not on him, then we're going to have to say V'astama deloik Reb Meir. We're going to have to say that our Mishnah is not consistent with Reb Meir. Okay, so that takes us to the end of this shtickle. I wonder if Rabbi Elazar was single, because all the ones who are married know that everything that happens between you and your wife is your fault. So they obviously know it's who knows him. It's only Rabbi Elazar that has seen this sentence. I'm not sure how that works. So, but Pashtus, it's always who knows him. Anything that goes wrong is your fault. Zok to Gemara weiter. The Savar Rabbi Yosy Ba'niosh Shaloi Nosan Kitzvah. Are you telling me that we're talking about someone who told his wife he cannot use a certain cosmetic? And of course, that means she made a nether and he was Mekayim it, but if it was made without a limit, then he should have been Mefer. And if he wasn't Mefer, it's his fault. And then he has to give her a get and pay her ksuba. Who said he even had a right to be Mefer this nether in the first place? Alma Baal Motzi Mefer. Clearly, from the fact that Rabbi Yosy penalizes the husband for not being Mefer, this must be the type of nether that a husband can be Mefer. Because we do know that a husband cannot be Mefer any type of nether that his wife makes. He could only be Mefer 2 types of neder. A neder of inui nefesh, a neder that's causing her to torture herself, like I'm going to fast for a day, or a neder that involves their relationship, something that's not going to let her fulfill her responsibilities to him. But if she makes a neder that I'm not going to speak Lashon Hara from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock every day, that he has no right to be made for, because it's not inui nefesh. I'm not sure. Pashas is not inui nefesh. It depends on who you are, but it's not inui nefesh, and it's not a dvarim shebeino lebeino. So for Elu dvarim shabal mefer. These are the things that a baal could be mefer. Sheyesh bahem inui nefesh. If she says im erchatz or im lo erchatz. So I figure this is where we all have to come on to Tosfos. So he makes a neder as follows: that if Rashi bin Dor Mafarishla, the Amar she said, Te aser hanas rechitza alad. It should be aser for me to do a rechitza im erchatz if I wash. So the neder of im erchatz means if I take a shower, it should become from then on aser for me to ever take a shower. That's the case of im erchatz. The case of im lo erchatz is she made a shvua that she won't take a shower. And the same thing was with Kisha. If I pits up with makeup and perfume, that should trigger an isser of putting on makeup upon me. And in Bibisamim, if I put on makeup and I pits up in the next 30 days, it should permanently aser these things on me. So those are inu nefesh. Those are things that are inu nefesh. Rabbi Yosy said, "Ein elu nidre inu nefesh." Whether or not she wants to dress up or take a shower, that does not mean a neder of inu nefesh. And in fact, the husband wouldn't be able to be made for it. So what type of nedarim of inu nefesh can a husband be made for? The elu hey nidre inu nefesh shelo oichel basar v'shelo eshte yayin. Either that she won't eat meat, or she won't drink wine, or vishaloi iskashet the big day tzavonim. So not makeup, but putting on beautiful clothing, because Rashi says if she doesn't wear beautiful clothing, genai ubizoyin hula umiskana alav. Of her. She's being on herself. The fact has nothing to do with him. That's a different category. The inu nefesh nedarim that he has a right to be made for are even inu nefesh that don't affect him. No. So the Gemara's kasha is Rabbi Yosy says that kishut of cosmetics is not called inu nefesh. Kishut of fancy clothing might be inu nefesh, but kishut of cosmetics is not inu nefesh. Zok the Gemara. The reason why in our Mishnah he had a right to be made for her nedarim when it was a question of kishut, it wasn't kishut of a Chanel 5. It wasn't a perfume that we're talking about. It wasn't a base or a mascara or a blush. It wasn't that either. You know what it was? It was b'dvarim shebeinoi lebeina. No, Rashi says what it means is hair removal cream. It was hair removal cream. That if there's too much hair in a certain area, he could get injured. There are cases in the Gemara where someone got injured because a hair got caught on his aver while he was doing tashmish, and he got injured from it. So that's what it's referring to. That's what it's referring to. And that already is beinoi lebeina. So that category of beinoi lebeina gives him a right to be made for nedarim. Zok the Gemara. I'm not sure. If she won't take a shower, I mean, that'll be a problem, right? So I'm not sure how you deal with that. I'm wondering if Tosha speaks about it. I mean, someone does speak about it. I think I saw somewhere that someone speaks about it. Yeah, here it is. If you look at Tosha, Rabbi Yosy Omer ein elu nidre inu nefesh mash ma'achad rechitza v'kishut lo have inu nefesh Rabbi Yosy afilu nadra lekama yamim. Even if she says I'm not going to shower for several days, it's not considered inu nefesh, which is mashma from our Gemara. So Tosfos is talking about what you said. If she says that I'm never going to take a shower again, if that was called inu nefesh, those should have also been examples if they were long-term nedarim. So in fact, rechitza is not a problem. So I'm not sure how that would apply nowadays. But in those days, even if she said I'll never do rechitza, that's not considered inu nefesh. It might be beinoi lebeina. That might go into the category of beinoi lebeina, even if she's not going to be discussing with herself. I'm not sure, but this is what it says. Okay, so Zok the Gemara, it makes sense if you hold that way. So that's how you can explain your Yosy. If you hold the Baal cannot be made for Michael Memer. So how are you going to explain your Yosy why he holds that she becomes also? The Dvarim should be no. Funamar Baal Mefer. You know why? Do you ever see a fox get injured in his own foxhole? Did you ever see a spider get caught up in its own web? So on your home turf, you'll know how to navigate. So too, even if she doesn't remove her hair, a person will know how to navigate his home turf. So therefore, there's never an issue of even beinoi lebeina, you wouldn't be able to make.
It's dark. The fox can see at night. The spider is not very...
I can't get into the nitty-gritty of this smara. However, now we're at a loss to figure out Rabbi Yosy. Why does Rabbi Yosy say that if it's for long term, right away she's also how? Because he wasn't made for. under what grounds could he have been made for even if he would have wanted to? Alahacha b'mayaskinan kegoyin detalinu lekishute b'tashmish amita. And this is, I'm sorry, I think this is what I meant. Tosfos was creating a similar scenario on Amud Aleph. She was tola the kishut on tashmish amita, and that already made it a davar shebeinoy levinah. The Amar, she said, Yesar hanos tashmish chalai. It should be also for me to have a no from your tashmish im iskashet if I pits. So therefore, Zok Rashi, now it can be made for already because Dilma miskashetes, because if she's going to be over the trigger, means lukishut umitzur anos tashmish alay, and then tashmish will be also. That already is something relevant to him that it can surely be made for. The Amar of Kahana, hanos tashmishi alecha. What if she says you may not have a no from my tashmish, that she doesn't have a right to withhold from him because it's meshubit. That's part of her contract, her marriage contract. So therefore, koifo misham shasai. You force her to do tashmish because her nether will not be chal. She'enu yachol lesser atzma love. She can't do that. But anos tashmishach alai. But if she says it's also for me to have enough from you, that is what she could put on herself. And then Rashi says we're not going to force her to do something, even if she has a shiba to do it, if it's forcing her to eat isurim, to consume isurim, and tashmish will be also for her. Therefore, Yofer, therefore you could be mefer. The Gemara says that. You're not going to force her. Frank the Gemara, I don't understand. She didn't say that her tashmish is also. She said if I do kishut, tashmish will be also. So why don't you just tell her why should the husband be able to be made for the nether? Why don't you just tell her v'loy tiskashet? Don't pits and then v'loy tesa, and then you won't become usher. So therefore, why do we say that he should be able to be made for it? Why is it called inu nefesh? Zok to Gemara, because in Cain karula menuvelas. Everyone's going to call her a menuvelas. Rashi says v'chi mevazu. Mikshata, if she becomes humiliated from the fact that she's not pitzing, ishtakach the neder's Israelov. So now weiter, the neder's answering her. Because I guess if she's menuvelas, he won't want to be with her. So basically here, whether she hits the trigger and she's miskashet, then he's also to her. Whether she doesn't hit the trigger, eventually he's going to be mias to her. So therefore, it's considered in an nefesh that he's allowed to be made for. Frank the Gemara, if that's the case, why could he be made for right away? Why don't we let her do kishut, and then tashmish will be aser? But remember, we said that if tashmish is aser, it's not necessarily a problem right away. We said right? We said that they could have a marriage and continue even though there's going to be an isra tashmish for a designated period of time. Zok to Gemara. If he makes a nether to usher them from having tashmish, that's something that she'll be more comfortable living with for a temporary period. The Savra she'll say, my husband really loves me, but he got angry at me, and in his fit of anger, he made a nether. But I'll wait till the end of the period, he'll calm down, and everything will be okay, or even he might even be made for another. He might even be matzah another in the middle. That's not so hurtful to her. She's still willing to stay in the marriage, and therefore we don't force the marriage to break up. But listen to the psyche of a woman. When she brought all this upon herself, meaning he wasn't angry at her, the shosagla, and he agreed. Now she's doubly angry at him. He didn't do this out of anger. I brought it to myself, and he agreed. Oh, he must hate me. When she asked you how I look in that dress, be careful what you answer. So since I made another, and you weren't angry with me, and you agreed to another, you must hate me. Now I can't even live with you one day. There's a beautiful shilas that they discuss here. What if a woman is snoring so bad that the husband cannot sleep in the same room as his wife? This was a shaila that Reb Zilberstein discusses. So that's already a question of, is that a question of Devarim Shebeinoi Leveino? Well, but vice versa, it doesn't matter because the question is, could she force him to divorce? Right? Okay, could be, but this is how the shilas came. There's also a shilas that the Tashbat discusses where the wife was a bedwetter, and because of that, they couldn't sleep in the same room. So it's very, very late. So let me finish the Gemara till the Mishnah leaves, and if we have time, we'll be mamshach. Rabbi Yosy Omer b'aniyah shalosh l'kitzvah. The kama kitzvah. How long could he, if he did put a date on it? If he did put a date on it for this woman who doesn't need to have perfume so much, how much would it be? Amar b'dam Shmuel Yud Beis Chodesh. It would be 12 months. 12 months is the maximum. Rabbi Bar Bachana Amar Rabbi Yochanan Eser Shanim, 10 years. Rabbi Chisda Amar Avimai Regel. It's up until the next Yom Tov. He can answer her without a problem from Kishut only until the next Yom Tov. She can benoish Yisrael Mishkashtish Beregel. Because all girls pitz by the Yom Tov, and she won't be able to survive not pitzing for Yom Tov. Ubashir Islam rich women is 30 days. Why 30 days? If they need to pitch, they need to have this perfume every day. Well, then it should be every day. What's up with 30 days? Because I guess their perfume was strong, and when they applied it, it lasted for 30 days. That's why 30 days is the cutoff. Okay, we'll stop here. Bezim will be mamshach tomorrow. So I just want to share those. You have to go. You have to go. The Chashut Mechamed discusses a woman who's snoring terribly. Is that called B'nai Levinon? He writes, even though nowadays there's so many different solutions, for some reason they couldn't. Nothing worked, and they weren't able to sleep in the same room. So they were able to have the mitzvah. They were able to do tashmish, the real B'nai Levinon, but after that they always had to move to the next room. So there was a shaila if there's a shaila, there's a mekach. If it's a mekach, because this is a real problem. Because so he said that's part of the normal living with a husband and wife that he should have a right to have. So he has such a shaila, and the Shuk Chemed brings the tashbats that talks about a bedwetter where it could be it was a problem. So there's a story with Reb Shach. A couple came to Reb Shach, and they didn't want a divorce, but his wife was a bedwetter, and he wanted to know if maybe his marriage is invalid because it's a mekach tos. So he asked Reb Shach what to do. So Reb Shach said, he asked him, where do you live, where do your parents live? And it turned out that the parents of this couple live in Bnei Brak. So Reb Shach said, I want you to move to Yerushalayim. So the couple moved to Yerushalayim, and her bedwetting problem went away. So Reb Shach said, I thought that maybe living in the same city as her in-law, she's always tense. Who knows, someone's going to knock on the door, and could be that tension that caused it. So they speak about Avada. Reb Shach was davening for them that it should resolve itself. So that was an interesting shaila that they were discussing as to what's considered inyan nefesh that you could be a marriage for, or that it would be a problem of a mektos, or that you're allowed to give a get for. We shouldn't have such items.